Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Hayla Alawi, Atmosphere Press's Book Publicity and Events Manager. Thank you so much for joining us today for our free live event, From Fear to Finish, Empower Your Authorship Journey, a talk and Q&A with Dr. Trista Edwards. In this live event, you'll learn how you can take charge of your publication journey and become a published author with a quality book in your hands. Dr. Edwards will walk you through how to empower your authorship journey so you can emerge from the process feeling proud of the book you've produced. You'll also have the opportunity for Dr. Edwards to answer your questions during the Q&A portion of the event. So at any time, please do use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen to send in your questions. You can also check the Answered tab to see answers to questions that have already been posed. We want your author experience to be tailored to you so you can enjoy the process while you're creating the best possible version of your book. This is what we're all about here at Atmosphere. Founded in 2015 by Nick Portwright, an author and Ph.D. in literature, Atmosphere Press is the only publisher who puts rewarding and meaningful author experiences above all else. We've published more than 1,200 books. Our authors have won dozens of awards, and our books have reached the hands of tens of thousands of readers. Visit atmospherepress.com to learn more about how you can have a rewarding and meaningful author experience of your own, as well as to submit your manuscript for review. And if you mention this event in the first line of your cover letter, we will expedite the review process for your submission. With that, I'm excited to introduce our guest speaker. Trista Edwards holds a Ph.D. in creative writing from the University of North Texas, as well as an MA and BA from the University of West Georgia. She's the author of Spectral Evidence from April Gloaming Press 2020 and the editor of Till the Tide, an anthology of mermaid poetry from Sundress Publications 2015. Her poems have appeared in Ligeia Magazine, Flapperhouse, Dream Pop Press, Southeast Review, the Adroit Journal, White Stag, Lover's Eye Press, and more. Trista lives in Hiram, Georgia with her husband, son, and two pups, and when she's not talking about books, she can be found working on her various miniature dollhouses or making candles. You can read more of her writing on her website. That's www.tristaedwards.com. Trista, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Hayla. Well, welcome, fellow writers. It's an absolute joy to be here with you today. I will periodically be sipping a little tea. There's a little cold going around my house. I should probably update my bio. I have a son, as was mentioned, and a baby girl who's 8 months old now. So we're just learning now, my son's in pre-K, that germs travel fast, which I'm sure many of you out there know. So I know so many of you here today are filled with passion, with stories that are yearning to be shared. And that's exactly what we're going to explore. Your journey, particularly your publishing journey, from, moving from crafting those stories to setting them free in the world. I know what it takes to finish a manuscript. The dedication, the late nights, the sheer determination to bring your vision to life. I mean, you pour your heart and your soul into what you've written. You spend countless hours, breathing life into characters, weaving intricate plots, and polishing each sentence until it shines. And if you're, writing nonfiction, you're literally pouring your heart and soul and your life and possibly, your family and people that you know intimately, and you want to do them justice and do your story justice. So you've spent all this time creating a beautiful, wonderful, complex story or collection of poems. But then what happens after that? Writing it is kind of one thing. Writing is its own beast, its own animal, with all of its lovely ups and downs. But after that, often that's where a new wave of emotions suddenly washes over us. Doubt starts to whisper in our ear. We might start to question ourselves. Is this what I've written? Is it truly good enough? Will anyone connect with this? How do I even begin to navigate this overwhelming publishing world? I wrote this book. Now I've got to publish it. It's a whole new thing to learn. And trust me, I understand. Every writer, from aspiring novice to seasoned bestseller, grapples with these fears. It's normal. It's part of the creative process. But I truly believe there is an essential truth to what you have written, what is in your book. And that is that your story, your book has value, and the world is waiting to hear it. And that is precisely why you are here today. You are here, you signed up for this webinar because you want to empower your publishing journey. You want to move from that place of uncertainty to a place of confidence and control. So when publishing, you want a collaborative partnership. You want a team that understands your book, your story, your poems, that understands it's deeply personal. It's your creation, your voice. You want to work with a team who is going to honor that. You want a team of passionate individuals who are genuinely going to care about your success. You're not just looking for someone to print your book. You're really seeking a partner who respects your vision and your values and your creative control and supports you every step of the way. You want transparency, you want open communication to build strong, trusting relationships with your editors. You want your unique voice championed to help you achieve your publishing dreams. So one thing I want to talk, particularly about, is kind of delving into kind of the most crucial, perhaps maybe the most intimate aspects of the publishing journey, which, I think is developmental editing. And I want to speak to this because I wear a couple different hats at Atmosphere. So as an acquisitions editor, I speak to a lot of authors like yourselves at the very beginning of things. We're on a phone call, we're having a meeting, and we're having a conversation, just speaking to these fears and what do I do and how do I get started? And then beyond that, I also wear another hat of developmental editor. So I get to work with a lot of authors, beyond that initial step and really kind of dig into their stories. And that's where I see, a lot of anxiety that pops up among writers, developmental editing, that is, because this is where you and your editor truly immerse yourselves in the manuscript. You're exploring its heart, its soul, its strengths, its potential. I've worked with dozens and dozens of writers through this phase, and the fears and the concerns that I hear most often from not just first-time writers, but writers who have written numerous books is always that, how much are you going to change my story? Um, and I always want to reassure authors that this is far, far, far from my goal in our time together as writer and editor. Your book is your vision, and I want to make sure that that vision stays true from when we start working till you have that finished book, in your hand. Your story is yours. It's not ours as editors, as a press. We're really here to help you craft your vision, with precision. So I work closely with authors, offering insightful feedback, guidance, But there's a fundamental difference, and that's true collaboration. That's true partnership. Again, I'm not here to impose my ideas on your work. I'm here to help you refine your vision and polish your story, until it gleams. So a lot of this fear, as many fears go, come from, the unknown. Um, Developmental editing is a huge part of the publishing journey. And so we'll just peel back the curtain a little. And if you're unfamiliar of what that could entail, um, I'll just to kind of give you a picture is, developmental editing is really just a conversation with professional guidance. We have a discussion and you get feedback and we talk about things like character development. Are your characters multidimensional? Are they believable? Do the motivations resonate with the reader? Things like plot structure. Is the pacing engaging? Are there any areas of the story where it feels stagnant or rushed? The theme, the message, what is the heart of your story? Is it clearly conveyed? Voice, style. Is your writing voice authentic? Is it captivating? Does it draw the reader in? And of course, many of these points, pertain to nonfiction poetry and children's stories as well. So I listen attentively to your thoughts, your concerns, and it's really important to me, as it is to all of our editors here and the press as a whole, to respect your creative choices and work hand in hand with you to refine the manuscript until it truly shines. So it's about finding that sweet spot between creative autonomy and, professional guidance. Um, so yeah, with that, I'll leave you with this question. Um, are you ready to embark, on an incredible adventure, of taking that finished manuscript to a published book? Are you ready to take that dream in your heart and put that book in your hands, the hands of not just your hands, but the hands of your readers, because I truly believe that, your story deserves to be told and that the world is waiting to be captivated by it. I suppose that was more than one question, but some definite food for thought to leave with you, to leave on with you. Um, Thank you for being here today. It's been so wonderful to share with you, and I'm going to hand things back to Hala.
Thank you so much, Trista, especially for those insights and coming from your background and the work that you do with the press. I think it's really valuable to kind of almost hear like an insider take on those types of things that authors are constantly thinking about, whether they're a first-time author or, many novels or books down the line. So at this point, I do want to move into our audience Q&A. So for anyone in the audience, please go ahead and type any questions you have in the Q&A box that's at the bottom of your screen. There will also be answers to some of those questions coming in the answered tab of that box. But now I'll be fielding as many questions as possible to Trista in this time we have together. So Trista, this first question is, I have writer's block. How can I get rid of it?
Yeah, that is the question, right? Um, you know, my best advice for something like this is it's a frustrating one, but I do believe it is true, and that I think, baby steps, making something a daily practice or a semi-daily practice. We're all kind of waiting for that strike of inspiration, the muse, that, wild feeling of wanting to write. And I don't have that all the time. Um, I don't have it often. But I do try to sit down at my computer every day. And even if I am in a block and I don't feel like writing, I just set the smallest baby step of a goal. 100 words, 200 words, 50 words. Um, Progress is progress. And whatever you're writing that day, may eventually turn into something later. So I don't believe that anything is wasted. It'll always lead you to something.
Yeah, I think that's so critical that especially what you said, progress is progress, no matter what it looks like. I think that's so key for any writer. This next question, what do I do if I disagree with what my editor is saying?
Yeah, I mean, that's an important one. That's a good one. I get that. I hear that fear a lot. A lot of my interactions in my developmental meetings with authors, um, I mean, they're more discussions, and definitely people disagree with some of the feedback or suggestions that I make. And so I always want to validate them and say, I mean, at the end of the day, you have, the autonomy to decline my suggestions. But definitely, I think there's a lot of benefit to just having a discussion with your editor and even talking through why you disagree. Um, it always, on both ends of the editor and the writer, always provides more insight, I think, into the work at hand. And so it's okay if you disagree with your editor. It's okay. You know your book best. And while your editor's there to give you professional guidance, if something is steering away from the heart of what you want to say, um, you know, go with your gut, go with your intuition.
Yeah, I think that gives a lot of authors a chance to breathe a sigh of relief, going with the intuition, I think can be so difficult sometimes in those conversations, but like you said, just willing to have a conversation is huge. Another question, can you talk about the pros and cons of hybrid publishing?
Yeah. To me, one of the biggest pros is, I mean, just having that creative control. And it goes beyond the editing process, down to the way that your book looks, the cover design. Um, I don't, who knows where the saying started, don't judge a book by its cover. I mean, we know at the core what that saying is getting at. Um, but I think what that's translated to in the publishing world is that as writers, we shouldn't care about our covers and what they look like. And I think that's a huge part of the book. I think a lot of writers get excited to see aesthetically what, the vision of the book goes beyond the words and it goes to how it's presented to the eye. And you know, that's fun to work on the cover and brainstorm ideas and, visualize it setting, in a bookstore on a shelf or in someone's, personal library. So having a lot of control over not just, the content, but the way that the book looks, is a huge pro, and I hear that time and time again from authors. They really loved having the reins of being able to go through this entire process and be the ones who get to make the choices about their book, not being told what choices they have to make. Um, you know, uh, the timeline is much quicker, from beginning to end versus say traditional publishing. Um, you know, that's not to speak poorly or badly of traditional publishing, but I always talk to authors that, if it's one of your goals, one of your desires to not have to wait 1 to 2 years after signing a contract to have your book, which is pretty standard time frame in traditional publishing. Hybrid publishing is, again, that's another way to have a little bit more control over the entire process. Um, it's about, average 5 to 8 months, from the time you start to the time you hold your book. Um, Having 100% rights to your work is a huge one. Um, And, cons, I think there's obviously the financial aspect, that you are investing, upfront into your book. So that's one, of course, that is very, it's a very practical, concern. So there are, ways to combat that. Particularly with atmosphere, we have payment plans. So, if you're wanting to start the process, you can again take baby steps to, be able to kind of financially invest, in your book and in your vision.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute there for a second, but yeah, definitely. I think it really dependent on each individual and what fits them best. So that's great. Thank you. We've got another question. This question is, why should I publish with Atmosphere and not another hybrid publisher?
Excuse me. Um, I mean, definitely, obviously I'm really biased, but I think we have a great team of people. And that's, who you're working with. You're working with real people. Um, so you're kind of working with a small team along the way, and, transparency and communication are key. Um, Again, I hear time and time again, when I talk to authors at the end of the process, when they do have that book in their hand, that they loved who they worked with, and they want to come back with their second book because they really bonded with their editor, and their editor became familiar with their work. They really liked working with Ronaldo. He's our art director, and kind of brainstorming to design the cover. So there's a real personable people aspect, I think, to us. And we are all really excited, kind of champions and writers and book nerds and all that. So we're genuinely excited when we're working with an author to help them, make their dream come true. And something I've said to writers before is that, we're gonna we're gonna make you a great book. You're gonna have a beautiful book by the end of this. But another part of this process is we're gonna make sure that you have a wonderful time in the making of it with us. So it's more than just your book. It's about, you and your journey in the making of it.
Yes, exactly. Again, I love the author focus. I also, of course, am biased, but I think that's so important to us. Um, New question. This one is, I'm worried about people not liking my book. What if it's a flop?
Yeah, that fear is real. It's a legitimate fear. It's valid to feel those things. But as I say this, I have this sticker right here on my laptop that says, write the story that you want to read. And that's something even I have to remind myself of all the time when I'm confronted with, a similar fear in my head of people not liking my book. Um, there is somebody out there who wants to read your story. There's somebody out there who needs it. Um, I always say, think of the books that have affected you in that way. Your book will do that for somebody else. So, it may not be everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay. It will be a success with the people who need it. So, just remember that when that fear starts to creep into your brain, that like if you're passionate about what you have written, that you have written the story that you want to read, somebody else is going to want to read it as well. And chances are that that's more than one, that's a lot of people. So I say try not to worry about it too much. There are always people who are going to like your book.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Trista. This question is a big one, but the question is, how much of your manuscript has to be done before submitting? How much editing help do authors get? And then do authors keep their rights?
Yeah, that's a really important one. So when you're submitting your manuscript to us, you know, it should be, 90% done. It doesn't have to be a polished gem. It doesn't have to be perfect, because that's what we're going to work on together. But it should be almost complete. That way, when it gets handed to your editor, they have that book, to read in full and prepare notes and feedback to give you when you have meetings with them. Um, so, the editing help that authors get, I mean, like I mentioned, if it's, we're going to go over the structure of fiction, nonfiction, plot, character development, pacing, tone, things like that. Are there plot holes? And talk about all those aspects. With poetry collections, we're going to look at individual poems and talk about the themes in the book. And, are they organized in a way that creates an overarching narrative, beyond the individual poems, but as a collection, what are they saying? So you're going to get help with all of that. And it's going to be, in person, or over the phone, in voice to voice, I guess you could say, with your editor, and help, over email. Um, and yes, authors get to keep 100% of their rights to their work. So, nobody owns your story or your characters or your poems, other than you, which that's big.
Yeah, definitely. And a huge aspect that authors have to consider, of course. This next question is, I don't have money to publish. What else does Atmosphere do?
Our website is a great resource. So that's always a great place to start. There are blogs on there, there are testimonials of other authors' experiences. If you even need to dig further on like what is this journey really like beyond just, me telling you today. Um, there are so many examples on our website. If you're like me, I like hearing other people's experiences. I like hearing their stories. How was it for them? What did they do? What did they say? So that's a great place to start. There's lots of advice and tips on the website for, a variety of things, writing, publishing, marketing. So, if, publishing is not quite in the budget just yet, um, that's a great place to start. And just keep writing, keep at it.
Yeah, I'm actually putting some resources directly from our website in the chat for everyone. So definitely be sure to check those out and see what kind of, we've got more resources than that on the website as well. So feel free to poke around. But in the meantime, another question for you, Trista. Would Atmosphere Press work with authors from other countries, such as the UK or Australia?
Yeah, most certainly. I mean, work with authors all over the world. So wherever you live. This is a virtual world, so we'll be able to not only work with you, but be able to distribute your book globally as well. So wherever you're located, you know, um, we can work with you.
Absolutely. Another question. I love that you said the developmental editing phase is more of a conversation. Do you ever work with authors who may be a little shy during this process? And if so, how do you make them feel more at ease?
Yeah, I work with a lot of authors that are shy about this process. It's their first time ever doing something like this, their first time publishing a book. Their first time ever having written a book. So when I reach out that first introduction over email when we're like scheduling a meeting, I always want to reassure people from the get-go and let them know what this experience is going to be like and reassure them that it is a conversation. And, I ask them questions. What are you concerned about in your book? What are you happy about? What's still kind of keeping you up at night so we know how to focus our conversation? Um, I tell them I'm like this is a conversation, so you don't have to worry about me coming in with the metaphorical or the literal red pen and just slashing up your work. Again, I'm not here to do that. That is not my goal. I would not want to do that. I want to help you make it better, not tear it down. Um, so yeah, if you're feeling a little shy, I think that's natural. That's okay. But take a little, I think, reassurance in knowing that, it's more of a conversation. And your voice, you're not going to sit there and have your editor just talk at you, for 90 minutes. It's a lot of back and forth, and it's a lot of just, talking about the book and its problems and its strengths and its heart and all those things and areas it could be improved. So if you're feeling a little timid, I'd say that's natural, but I think just know going into it that um it is more conversational.
Definitely, yeah. So lots of good experience there too. Another question, this is, can you speak about beta readers? Are they necessary and how do I find them?
I think beta readers definitely can be beneficial. Do I think they're necessary? No. Um, having trusted beta readers to read your book and give you feedback from the beginning can be wonderful. But the same thing with feedback, sometimes you can get too much feedback. It can get muddy. There are a lot of places to go online to look for beta readers, if you want someone maybe more professional. But even if you have a trusted friend, family member, someone that you value their opinion about, what their stories, what your story is about, ask them to read your work, and, they can tell you what they think. Um, so yeah, I think they can be great. I think you can glean a lot of perspective from how other people are reading or viewing your story before it gets published. I don't think it's you must to do it. But I think it depends on, what you feel you need. Are you someone who really benefits from having multiple perspectives? Are you stuck and you're like, oh, I really need to hear what other people think of this book, so that it can edge me one way or the other? Um, then sure, it can definitely be helpful.
Yeah, for sure. Like you said, I think it depends on the author and yeah, it really can be tailored to them. We've got another question. This one is, I'm 75 years old. I started seriously writing in my 60s and have had poems and personal essays published in various literary magazines. Is it possible to have a book published at my age while I have no real internet presence?
Yes, most definitely. And congrats on those publications. Yes, I don't think that there is any cutoff time, for who can publish at what age. I've worked I mean, we've published very young authors. I've worked through developmental editing with young authors who are 15, 16 years old, and I've worked with authors who are, in their 80s and 90s. And so you certainly can. And I think, if you have no real internet presence, I don't think that should hinder you from publishing. If you're worried about getting word of the book out there, once it has been made into a thing that you can hold in your hands, there are many other ways to go about it. You don't have to have an internet presence. You could you could email to friends and family. You could go to your, local um, library and, put up flyers, or, do a reading as a local author. Or if you have local bookstores, go to them and say, hey, I've got this book, I live in town, do you promote local authors? And chances are they probably do. So yes, please publish, you certainly can at any age, um, you know, with or without the internet.
Absolutely, yes. I know we've just got time for a couple more questions here, so I'll get down to these last two. But first one, what strategies do you employ to maintain the author's voice while ensuring coherence?
Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah. What strategies do I employ to maintain the author's voice while ensuring coherence? Well, I always, beyond reading the book, right? And again, I think this is where having conversations with authors is the meetings that we have together is important because I always, when presented with a question like that, I kind of throw a lot of questions back at the author so that we can start to dig down into like what how do you see your voice? What do you want your voice to, how do you want it to be perceived by the reader who is holding this book? Um, and sometimes, they'll share that with me, oh, I really want this to be, my voice to really convey a story of grief or a story of redemption. Um, and that's where, sometimes as an editor, I could be like, that's definitely coming through. Here are examples in your writing where that is really solidifying that vision you have for your voice. Or it could be a example of like, if that's really your goal, if that's the voice you are wanting to portray with your writing, we may have to work on that a little. Here are some examples where I feel like this story really isn't about grief. I feel like this story is about happiness. That bad example, but something else. So again, that conversation, that back and forth, that asking authors questions, I think is really key. Because again, I want to make sure that we are really presenting this book and your story how you're envisioning it. So asking how you envision it and how you want it to be perceived, and then having that information as I read and going like, okay, we're really hitting that goal. It is coming across clearly. And if it's like, we need to make some adjustments, if we want that, cohesion throughout the book, if you want that thesis, so to speak, of that voice carrying through, then, we may need to go back and revisit some places.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it keeps coming back to it's really just tailored to each author and their experience and their work. So there's always room to make that process what works best for both of you. Okay, so at this time, we've just got one final question we've got time for. This one is, if someone wants to take the next step with their manuscript, whether they're completely new to Atmosphere or they've already been offered a contract, what should they do next?
Hmm. So if you're completely new, and you're like, all right, Trista, I'm ready. Let's do this. You'll go on our website and there's, a place where you can upload and submit, your book. And, our turnaround time of getting back to you, is, fairly quick. So you'll get, in contact where, you can have a meeting with one of our acquisitions editors, and have a phone call with a real person, who can go further, with kind of the discussion that we're having now. And you can ask more questions and find out, if you're ready to do it. So getting kind of that personal touch again, talking to one of our editors, and how to submit and what to do. Um, if you've already been offered a contract, it sounds like, maybe you've already been in touch with one of our editors. Um, Certainly, get back in touch with them. Um, you can reach out to them and say, hey, I'm ready to go. Maybe I was hesitant at first, maybe I was thinking through some things, but um, you know, I went to that webinar with Trista and she convinced me it's time. Because it is time. So yes, just go on our website, submit your manuscript. If you've already been in touch with, one of our wonderful editors, reach out to them again and we'll get you going on the next steps.
Perfect. Well, I know that's all the questions that we've got time for today, but for anyone in the audience who has a question that wasn't answered, please consider checking out Atmosphere Press's YouTube channel. We've got previous live sessions with publishing professionals on there, and there's a wealth of information to dive into. But for now, with that being said, I just want to say thank you again so much to Dr. Trista Edwards for sharing your experience, your time, your publishing wisdom today. Thank you to everyone in the audience as well for being here with us and for fielding these thoughtful questions to us. If you are a writer looking for a rewarding and meaningful publishing experience, check out those links in the chat. I just put them in there one more time for everybody and visit us at atmospherepress.com. On our website, you can sign up for our email newsletter, browse our new and forthcoming releases, meet the humans behind Atmosphere Press, check out our testimonials, and of course, submit your manuscript. Remember to mention this event in the first line of your cover letter, and we'll make sure to expedite the review process for you. We look forward to staying in touch with all of you, and on behalf of Atmosphere Press, have a great rest of your week, everyone.